This call is now being recorded.
Okay. Yeah, this is Randy Rosado here at St. Lucie County Jail over on Rock Road in Fort Pierce. And it's been a couple of days since I recorded anything, but basically I'm in Dorm 11 now after that little disaster that happened last week. I think it's November 9th today. And, I feel like I still have a target on my back, but I'm just, keeping to myself and, trying to avoid people. My attorney says he's trying to get me moved to another county, but I've also heard this for the last year and a half, so I'm not even sure. Basically, the latest is that in order for me to go to another jail, they need to know how to get paid for me, because that's what this is all about. This is all about money. It's all about the jails getting paid for every body that it has in it. So, it's really not about police keeping the streets safe or protecting and safety and all that. It's about money and about how many people they can lock up for whatever reason. So that's kind of what's going on. And that's why people really don't trust police, because, like last week, basically I got robbed and said something about it, and the next thing you know, I become the problem. They turn me into someone who did something wrong. Of course, the person who did it, who was caught doing it, lied and said that, I was selling him phone calls or trading, which happens in jail all the time. People trade stuff, but that wasn't even the case, because, that's how we survive. I mean, even toilet paper, we don't get toilet paper that much. We have to beg for it, so people trade for it. That's kind of what goes on, but, it violates jail policy. I kind of equate it to, like, if your house got robbed, you called the police and they showed up and found out you left the door unlocked, and they decide to arrest you and charge you for being an accomplice to the crime. That's kind of what went on. Or if someone used your alarm system PIN code, it's your fault that they got a hold of it. So needless to say, now I've got to be real careful about my PIN. The PIN used to be used just for the phones and free phone calls and stuff, but now it's used to control these tablets, which that's where people can go in and try to take your money. But anyway, I'm kind of done with the tablets too. You got 8 of them to share with 40 people, and it's impossible to get one because people think they own them. So I liked doing the studying on the Khan Academy and all of that, but it's not worth the headache. It's just something else to fight about, and that's what the jail wants. They thrive on strife and putting us at each other, because there's a chance that they could come up with more charges by creating that friction. But anyway, I want to talk about the Lee County case because I got 40 years for documents filed by someone else, by a man named Joel Soucy. And if you look at the document, and I mean, there's a few different documents, and what they did was they took separate episodes, stacked them up, which I argued violated double jeopardy, but we'll get to that later. Then they stacked them up and created 19 charges. But I want to focus on counts 1 through 8 because that's what I was sentenced on. They took them, they maximized them, gave me 5 years each, times 8 was 40 years. So my argument was that they say I simulated the legal process, but it wasn't an actual legal process, not those individual exhibits that were attached to that document. So if anyone's interested, especially a legal mind, I'm hoping to get some legal expertise on this. If anyone goes to the randallrosado.blogspot.com and looks at the record pages 1931 to 1965, which is Exhibit 27, this is what they used at trial to say the crime I committed. Now, if you look at this document, you'll see my name is nowhere on it. It's a document by Joel Soucy. All the documents none of them have my name on it. Most of them are by this Joel Soucy. Joel Soucy was from Massachusetts. I think he lives in New Hampshire now. And basically, he signed documents, notarized them, filed them. Even when he was in jail, he was writing handwritten documents and filing them. I had no communication with him at that point. He was doing this all on his own, yet they paint me to be the big bad wolf who was directing him and somehow controlling his mind. So I'm just this is, I guess, just for my own peace of mind, for my family to see, for my friends, for anyone who's judged me or looked at these documents and said, wow, he really must have done some bad things based on what the news says. Because when you look at this document and you look at the actual charge on May 22nd, 2015, and you see this judicial notice filed by Joel Soucy, this is what caused me to have 40 years in prison for something that Joel did, something that in itself is not an actual crime based on the statute and the definition of legal process. And I argued all these things, and the court doesn't care because the judges controlled this. The judges were the actual or the alleged victims. So anyway, I guess we'll go back a little bit. Back in 2013, my wife at the time and I we were asked to do marketing for this workshop. It was a workshop for attorneys to attend. It was actually approved by the bar associations in several states, and we were basically promoting seminars, and these attorneys could attend the seminars and get continuing education credits, which is required with their membership to the bar association. So we were approved in several states, including Florida, and we helped promote these workshops. So I did a YouTube video one time interviewing a man named Regis Sauger, who was one of the trainers of the workshop. And that video was used to promote the workshop, but months and even years after the workshop ended, people were still hearing this video and contacting us to try to have information, because the video was basically to teach attorneys about the mortgage fraud and help people during the foreclosure crisis, because people were still kind of rebounding from the 2007, 2008, 2009, the whole mortgage disaster and all the foreclosures and the whole tsunami of foreclosures and everything that happened after that. So so Regis talked a lot about credit default swaps and mortgage fraud and all the things that these banks were doing, and basically for properties they didn't have true ownership to. They talked a lot about the funny mortgage assignments and the robo-signers and different things like that. And we had gone through this in our New York property on our family home that my brother owns, and we had found a lot of problems in that mortgage, and we were able to fight it, show the court the issues, and after many, many years of fighting them, get it resolved because the evidence was clear. The bank trying to foreclose had no legitimate standing. So anyway, Joel Soucy owns two properties in Fort Myers, Florida, and he came across this video, and at the time, Joel had already been studying different things about private banking, about the mortgage fraud, about sovereignty, I guess you can call it, or whatever. So he was studying with people like Winston Trout and people that are well-known for training and teaching this stuff. But most importantly, he was really focused on trying to save his two properties in Fort Myers, and he actually was able to successfully negotiate with the bank and get loan modifications. And this was before I'd even had a conversation with Joel. Matter of fact, I never physically met Joel until he testified against me at trial, blaming me for everything that he did. And he got probation for the same thing they gave me 40 years in prison for. It's just absurd. So I had no skin in the game, so to speak. In other words, there was no benefit to me to do any of this for Joel. I wasn't getting a part of his properties. He wasn't sharing the rents with me. He wasn't. There was no monetary gain. He claims he paid me $8,000 to do documents for him, which is a complete lie, and of course he can't prove it. No one can prove anything they said against me. It's, they paid me cash, they did this, they did a favor, they paid my bills. No one, everyone says that, I got all this money from them, but no one could actually show any proof because it's just not true. And not to mention, that's not what I'm charged for. So I'm not actually charged with, I was never charged with stealing from Joel Soucy or anyone else. I was charged with the paperwork that he did and got a probation over. So it's kind of obscene. So anyway, and Joel had gotten mortgage audits on these mortgages, on these rental homes he's got in Fort Myers. And apparently these mortgage audits that he got, again, years before I met him, determined that there was fraud in his mortgage. So he was determined to fight this fraud, even though he had signed a loan modification, which means he agreed to new terms with the bank. So even though and it's really difficult to get a loan modification. It was back then, and he prides himself on the fact that he was one of the few people who were ever successful in getting a loan modification, let alone getting two. And he took a training, and he became certified in doing loan modifications. But the state painted the picture that Joel was this feeble old man who didn't know anything about anything. He was just a poor old carpenter who this big bad Rosado guy took advantage of and told him to do stuff he really didn't want to do. It's a complete crock. It's complete garbage because, again, he did all this before I met him, in addition to filing handwritten motions in his own case, and I'm sure that his case information is in my documents. I don't have it offhand, but you could look up Joel Soucy in Lee County, and you could see it. It's in my discovery too. But anyway, I can provide proof of any of this. It's just hard from jail. I have to get the assistance of some family members and my mother and people who have access to the documents. But the point is, he wrote all this stuff on his own. I didn't do it for him while he was in jail. Now, we studied some of the same things, and I had helped him with some trust, putting his property into trust. Now, that wasn't to protect his foreclosure. That was to protect him from liabilities when it comes to, landlord-tenant disputes and things like that. Because, a lot of people for years have been using trust to protect their assets. Nothing uncommon. So I had assisted him in that capacity. But everything else, we were kind of sharing information. If I got access to a training material, I'd share it with him. He was putting me in contact with people like this Winston Shrout, who I think might be doing federal time right now. And Winston has been training on this secured party stuff for years and years. So anyway, if you look at that document, though, on May 22nd, 2015, that's what I was sentenced on. So my convictions, based on the fact that counts 1 through 8, all have to do with a single exhibit, exhibits that were in this single filing. So it was one single act, and I was charged 8 times and convicted 8 times, and they were run consecutively, and I was given a life sentence for something that, even if I was convicted, shouldn't have carried more than 5 years. But that's the nuts and bolts of what happened to me in Lee County. So now I'm fighting to get my life back. And any insight from any attorneys will be helpful. Any support from friends or family will be helpful. My mother's been struggling. My life has been turned upside down. So, I appreciate anything anyone can do, even if it's just prayers and good word. Prayers are better than anything right now because I need all that I can get, and I appreciate it. And I just appreciate anyone taking the time to listen. And sorry if I'm kind of all over the place. It's early in the morning here, and hard to get to the phones any other time of day. So I'm really only on my first cup of coffee. But yeah, that's kind of what happened. They made it a really confusing case, and they really tried to confuse the jury with a bunch of nonsense details that had nothing to do with anything. They violated my rights up and down. I can go on, and I did in my appeal. I mean, if you read the appeal, you see I detailed a lot of those arguments, and I'll talk about them more another time. But if anyone can shed some light on these charges, the fact that no other case with this charge has gone to trial, and the fact that they took this single incident and turned it into something really...
You have 1 minute remaining.
Turned it into something really insane. If anyone could shed some light, I'd really appreciate it because, again, on May 22nd, 2015, I got a life sentence. Well, for the acts that happened on May 22nd, 2015, I got a life sentence for something that did not benefit me, and this was all having to do with Joel Soucy. But he decided to blame me, get a little probation, and let me try to spend the rest of my life in prison. But I know God is good. I know that's going to happen. So I just want to thank everyone for listening, and that's it. I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for using GTL.